what do you mean by body composition of a person, and how can one figure it out what is an ideal body composition for them?
Right. So in body composition, you're basically referring to your bone mineral density, because you have bones, you have muscles, right? So you're referring to muscle mass. Then you have fat, so you're referring to fat mass. You have water, so you're referring to water mass. You also have organ weight. Then you have visceral fat, so you're referring to visceral fat mass. Now, a body composition basically refers to what is the constituent weight of all of these components in your body, right? So you would want a higher bone mineral density, because that prevents you against certain kinds of injuries and against sarcopenia, or let's say osteoarthritis, or any problems in the future, right? So you want like a higher bone mineral density is desirable. At the same time, high body fat percentage has been linked to numerous diseases, right? So you want a lower body fat percentage. Visceral fat is even worse than normal body fat percentage, because it affects your organs, right? So you want an even lesser percentage of visceral fat, right? So this picture you can get either through a DEXA scan, or just go to a gym. They typically use an impedance machine. It's also called a BCA machine, body composition analysis. You go there, stand on the machine with electrodes, hold the electrodes. It'll give you a printout, and it will analyze how much body fat percentage you have, how much muscle mass you have, how much body water you have, right? So that's basically.
And does the ratio vary depending on the gender and the age?
Yes.
So as you age, is there something more what you would need to have as a composition, what you may not have as you were in your prime time?
I mean, there are generic guidelines, but there's a more leeway. As you age, the recommendations become more loose. For example, I would suggest, somebody between the 20s, 30s, 40s, or even 50s, 60s, 70s to stay below 10% body fat. But the guidelines are very loose, right? So they'd say, hey, if you're below 20%, it's fine.
When I started reading more about right format of eating, I was thrown different ways of how you can structure eating. Two of the most common was intermittent fasting and caloric deficit.
Yeah.
Why should one choose either of it? How can one choose what is good or what is more suitable for them in between these two formats?
So again, calorie deficit is not a format. Intermittent fasting is a dieting technique to achieve calorie deficit. So calorie deficit is basically, think of your body as a car, and it has certain amount of energy needs, right? You have a car tank, which is like X liters of capacity. You don't want to fill the tank above that, because if you fill the tank above 40 liters, the fuel will come out. Unfortunately, in case of human body, the fuel doesn't come out. Your body has the capability to store it further. So you get a tummy, you get like thicker arms, and that's basically your body's way of telling you, hey, you're eating too much.
No, so between calorie deficit and intermittent fasting, if one has to pursue one form of dieting, right? How should one figure it out what is good for them, or how should we figure it out?
Right. Yeah. So calorie deficit is basically eating less than your body's caloric needs. Intermittent fasting is one way to achieve caloric deficit. So intermittent dieting is basically a dieting technique, and calorie deficit is a state of being in deficit, right? The two are very different. So it's not a matter of what you need to pick. For example, if you want to lose weight, suppose your maintenance calories, like the calories that your body needs to sustain every day, is around 2000 calories, which means that, hey, if you keep consuming 2000 calories, your weight will not budge, right? And you've arrived at this number through maybe like an equation, or by observing your weight trend, or whatever, right? Or maybe through different means, using even a variable, right? So 2000 calories is where you're kind of stuck. Okay, if I keep consuming 2000 calories, my weight will not budge, right? If I need my weight to budge, maybe I need to consume fewer calories. The minute you consume fewer calories, that state is being referred to as calorie deficit. Now, you can go in this state by eating, so let's say 1800 calories. Now, 1800 calories can be divided throughout the day, and let's say 300 calories, 6 meals, okay? Or you say, I'm going to have 2 meals of 900 calories each, which some people refer to as intermittent fasting. Both ways are perfectly fine. There's no problem with either. Or you can also have 600 calories in 3 meals. That's also perfectly fine. What has happened is that a lot of people cannot just restrict themselves to eating 300 calories at a given time. So they want to eat big so that they feel more satiated, and so intermittent fasting works for them. I also eat 2 meals typically, right? And I like to consume like meals which make me feel satiated. I'm not feeling immediately hungry. If I eat a smaller meal, I'm hungry again after, let's say, 15-20 minutes. If I eat a large enough meal, I'm not hungry for at least 4 to 5 hours. But the problem is that if I start eating larger meals, then I might overconsume my calories. So intermittent fasting is basically a way to make sure that I'm meeting my caloric needs and keeping myself in calorie deficit.
Does the chronology of your macros matter when you having your meal? Means having the protein first, then the fibers, then the carbs. Does that really matter, or what matters most is how much you're having in it, what equation?
The macros and micros, they travel at a different speed, because if you think about carbohydrates, the amylase, right, it breaks down carbohydrates, starts breaking down it into glucose in the minute you start chewing it, right? But when we talk about protein, the very first time protein gets any sort of exposure to any sort of protease is in your stomach, right? And then fats, the metabolism is even more slower because most of the metabolism happens in liver and GI, right? Some bit of it happens in stomach also. But the point is that even if you consume all the food ingredients together, the digestion is going to happen at a different rate, right? So just because you had dal first and chawal later, it's not much of a difference. A lot of people I think they overthink this, and it's not like, see, when it comes to nutrient absorption, right? It would have made sense that when both the things were traveling almost together and they were getting digested at the same time. If the digestion is happening at different times, definitely the absorption is also going to happen at a very, very different time. So I don't think mixing one meal or another meal, I think it's more prominent from the point of view of insulin spikes, which I agree, but the nutrient absorption part, I just don't get it. Okay, because the digestion speed is different for different kinds of foods. And so there's no way one micronutrient is going to affect absorption, especially if they are traveling at different speeds in your GI tract. Yeah. Insulin thing, I think there is some merit to it. If you add more fat to, let's say, your carbohydrate source, it will probably not cause a much higher insulin rise in your insulin levels. But at the same time, insulin is also dependent on the load of the volume of the food, right? So I think more people need to understand that insulin is not so bad, and it's fine to have insulin spikes. The problem is not insulin spikes. The problem is the size of these spikes and your overall health. So if you reduce weight, you can definitely have insulin spikes. That's the job of your pancreas, to release insulin so that it can shuttle your micros and macros into your macronutrients into your body, right?
Two types of physical training I've seen most common. One is weight training and one is high interval training, which can also be an extension of your cardio, right? Yeah. How does one figure it out, the right balance between both when they figure out what they need from either of that?
Right, so you have to look at it from the lens of, actually you have to look at them from different set of lenses. If you have a specific goal which pertains to your sport, then you have to do one kind of training more than the other, right? Example, if you're running marathon, and marathon is a sport, it's not exercise. If you have to do marathon, you need to have more stamina, you need to have more endurance. You'll probably need much more number of slow twitch fibers compared to high twitch muscle fibers, right? So your training has to pertain to that. So form follows function. If you do enough marathons, if you train like a marathoner, you become a good marathoner. But if you're somebody who's into high intensity sports like martial arts or boxing, where speed and power both play a very critical role, and it's not about who's going to last how long, because people can get knocked out in the first round itself. I think that's where you have to focus more on developing your anaerobic capacity. And so if you are anchored around sport, and then it has to be sport specific training. But if you're not anchored around sport, then I think we have sufficient evidence to conclude that sprinting, HIIT, RT is a better form of achieving good health and well-being.
Is VO2 max a good indicator or perhaps an ideal indicator of measuring your lifespan or your health span?
Not lifespan or health span. See, lungs are critical, but your ability to hold oxygen during maximal exertion is not really in any way an indicator of how long you're going to live. I mean, it's a good indicator of your fitness, right? So, for example, somebody able to run, let's say, a sprint in 9 seconds is a good indicator of how fast of a runner he is. But it does very little to show if this guy is going to live longer.
So not a longevity metric.
Not a longevity metric. But on the other hand, your resting heart rate, I'd say, is a much more good indicator. Your HRV is a much better indicator because people typically die of cardiovascular incidents, right? So if your RHR is on the, and usually RHR and VO2 max, they go hand in hand. Yeah. Because typically your VO2 max is only going to be higher, and if it is going higher, your VO2 max, RHR is going to be lower. So you are doing something to achieve that, but still wanted to kind of make that clarification. But your HRV and your RHR, they are much more better metrics and linked to longevity compared to, let's say, a VO2 max.
Yeah. So HRV, for people who may not know, is heart rate variability, which is not heart rate, and it's the gap between how each beat, like the gap between the subsequent beat, right? So ideally, you would need a elevated HRV and a lower resting heart rate, right? What type of specific trainings can one do in specific to have better VO2 max and a lower HRV? Is it largely aerobic based workouts, or even strength based workouts can also aid you to do that?
So we have studies. So there's nothing better than zone 2 to build your aerobic capacity, because aerobic capacity, again, stamina and long distance endurance. If you want to build your VO2 max in a shorter period of time, then we have evidence that sprints and interval training work better than aerobic capacity in a specific time, right? And they're also, like, for people who are time constrained, HIIT performs better than your steady state, right? Sprints perform better than HIIT. But they can also become very challenging. So because sprints are very hard, HIIT is very hard. So if you are able to do HIIT in sprints, they are better. If you can't, then you can do steady state cardio. RT is very poor when it comes to building VO2 max, but it still is better than sedentary population. Okay, so if I have to rank, then I would rank sprints, HIIT, and then your steady state, then RT, and then general walks, and then sedentary.
When should one figure it out that they need to complement or augment their nutrition with supplements? And how do they figure it out? What is the right supplement they need to figure it out?
Supplements typically fall in 3 categories. So one is, you have your food supplements, which is if you're missing on a particular macro, largely it is protein, right? For example, if you're a vegan or if you're a vegetarian who don't have access to first-class protein sources, in that case, you can look at, plant protein isolates, or you can look at, let's say, whey protein, right? And that just complements or helps with your protein needs. So that depends on basically how good or bad your palate is, right? So that is your dietary supplements, your macronutrient supplements. Then the others are ergogenic supplements like beta-alanine. Then you have your any derivatives of nitric oxide, right, which improves your vasodilation and nitric oxide in the blood. And then you have caffeine, which stimulates your CNS, right? Then you have certain recovery drugs also. So all these things are very, very subjective. It depends on your athletic ability. It depends on if you need them, even for electrolytes, for example. Right, so 99% of the people who are just into general well-being and walks and all these things, they don't need these ergogenic aids, right? Then comes the conditional supplements, which is if I have a certain deficiency and I find that in my blood test that I have a vitamin D deficiency, and then my doctor will write me a prescription and I'll go and have vitamin D or B12, or if I have a magnesium deficiency or calcium deficiency. A lot of people take these conditional supplements as necessary supplements, which is absolute garbage. People should not take these conditional supplements unless until they have a specific deficiency. So get a blood test done, and that's how you figure out if you need conditional supplements or not. Ergogenic supplements, unless until you are an athlete who is struggling with, let's say your CNS or something, then you don't need ergogenic aids. And then you have protein supplements, right, which you can easily figure out.
Quick thing, you have to tell me whether it's overrated or underrated and why. Semaglutide. It's a generic term. People know it more as Ozempic or Wegovy. What do you think? It's overrated, underrated?
Well, it's helpful for sure in people who are struggling, especially people that 1% people who cannot lose weight without some sort of intervention, right, and who have like very poor willpower. In that case, semaglutide plus lifestyle intervention can be a really good way to help drive results in people. Semaglutide alone is basically a recipe for disaster, because going on semaglutide is basically going on a crash diet perpetually. The reason why people can't continue crash diets is because it becomes very difficult to sustain crash diets. You start losing muscle mass, you feel weak, you lose a lot of minerals, and you also suffer malnutrition. Now imagine doing a crash diet for a year. Basically, that's semaglutide for you.
So for someone who needs short-term outcomes, overrated. For someone the needy, it's underrated.
I wouldn't say underrated. I think
useful.
It'll have its time.
Okay.
It'll become a lifestyle drug over a period of time. But I still feel that it's very dangerous if doctors just prescribe semaglutide to someone without explaining them the pros and cons. If you are taking semaglutide alone without any dietary lifestyle intervention, you're doing a huge disservice to yourself, and that's not going to turn out good for you.
Wearables, overrated, underrated?
I'd say still underrated. Wearables can be amazing accessory. I think, and there's a saying that you can't progress or you can't improve what you can't track. And I believe that, wearables allow one to track and improve what's missing. And wearable is like a blood report. You go and test your blood parameters, right? So you know what's wrong. So wearables are like, it's a first level of tracking. And you can immediately figure out if your resting heart rate is, it's high, or your HRV is low, and that there's something wrong, and you can fix it by just improving your lifestyle. Or even your sleep. A lot of people think they sleep more, but when they wear their wearables, they know that the sleep efficiency is 50%, and they're waking up, the heart rate is shooting up when they're sleeping, right? And they are actually sleeping for 4 to 5 hours. They felt they were sleeping for 8 hours, but they're only sleeping for 5 hours, right? So I think wearables are still underrated, and primarily because people don't know how to use wearables.
So yeah, that was the basics. I think I tried to cover the most basics, I thought, because I get access to ask you a lot of stuff which I want, which perhaps is not basics for people, but I'm sure people will find a way to reach out to you. You are an educator on social media, so people will get to it. We want to wind down. So before we wind down, I want to touch upon the other side of yours. So in my mind, it was to ask you, what do people mostly misunderstand about you, which you think is not true?
I wouldn't blame people.
Yeah. What do they misunderstand?
They think I'm extremely strict, and sometimes they also think I'm rude and arrogant. But I like to call myself straightforward. But I think I might come across as rude and arrogant at times also. Maybe I'm too principled, and there are certain things that I don't like. So
you're not.
Again, look, you are what people think of you are, right?
Yeah.
So if I were to collect feedback from people, I think some people will rate me 5 out of 5, some will rate me 4 out of 5. I'm under no illusion that I'm a 5 out of 5 guy. I think somewhere between 4.2 to 4.5. That's my rating, and I'm happy with that.
So you have a daughter, Rachel.
Yes.
What have you learned yourself as a parent, which you didn't know about yourself unless you actually became a parent?
Yeah, I think I kind of feel bad for my parents, and I understand a lot of times when we are talking, right, I bring up the discussion about how my parents used to say the same, and I used to tell them what Rachel is telling us, and then I think it just brings in perspective. You start appreciating your parents more for whatever they did. Like we didn't have a very good life growing up because again poor, low middle class, right? But I think my dad did everything he could to bring us to this level, and so I think I'm extremely grateful for that, and I'm hoping that I'd be able to become half as good a parent as my. Actually, I think I'm a better parent, but.
In better parent compared to your parents?
Yeah, but I think they did their best.
Yeah, I'm sure. What's your biggest fear today?
Losing everything we have, and I think that's like the inevitable truth too, because that's how life is. You lose everything you have, so I'm just trying to hold on to everything as close as possible. So the rosy picture, it comes from this fear.
What is the one thing which you would like to change about yourself today, which you feel could make you even a better person?
Not really. I really like myself.
There's nothing. You're just the perfect. Like I said, too good to be true. So you're just too perfect to yourself right now.
I'm a good disciplined guy who's like a good guy on a good path, and I've calmed down too. My health parameters are perfect. My HRV is high. Resting heart rate is low. I'm low on stress, so I'm doing pretty good.
What is the one thing which you have changed or brought a change in yourself in the recent times, which has actually changed your trajectory?
My anger levels, anger.
What did you do to regulate that?
I think boxing helped me a great deal, and I think just going through some hard situations in life, it just gave me more perspective to be more appreciative of stuff in general.
This might sound cliche, but I think it's very important. What is this one advice you would like to give to someone in their 20s today, so that they can live a much more healthier life as they age?
I think by 20 you're already late. I started when I was 14, and I wish I would have started when I was 6. And if I had the right guidance, maybe I'd be winning medals for the country. I want to win, but I'm not, and I'll try. But I'm 38. I'm not getting any younger, right? So, as you grow up and when you accumulate wealth, you want to do a lot of things, and you want to win, and you want to do so much more. But now you can't because the age is not on your side. So I just don't want people to grow up, become wealthier, and then they think, oh shit, I wish I could have focused more on my health because none of this wealth is making me happy, right? So don't be one of those guys.
So then what is your number one long-term frustration as of today?
Frustration?
Yeah, do you have any long-term going frustration even as of today which you haven't been able to solve?
No, I think I'm in a pretty happy state. So
content state in life?
I'm okay. I don't have any, I'm growing, and like I said, I'm very patient. I'm building for next 20, 30 years, and everything is going great. Again, largely because this year, everything has been great since we moved into our new house. And so it's just a phase. Maybe the answer might change next year or next year after that, who knows. But if you ask me this question today, I think everything's pretty fine.
What can everyone, not just people who are watching and listening, but generally in today's time relevant, can do basics to help improve the health temperament of this country in a more scientific way? What can all do in their own capacity?
Educate yourself, practice the basics, and understand that it is important to educate yourself. Just like how you join a job and not do gambling. You don't gamble with your wealth. Why do you gamble with your health? Right? So just like you go to a job and do your work diligently, and over a period of time you build up a business or perform better in a job, right? And that becomes your identity. Same applies to health. It takes time. Wealth and health, they work exactly the same way. You gain them the same way, you lose them the same way. And it all has to do with discipline, hard work, willpower. And you lose it the same way by being careless. So just how you learn about wealth, please learn about health.
So other than about helping more people to get fitter, what is the future of Fittr?
I think I have this gut feeling, and I think now everybody in the team knows this because we've been this cycle of, oh, are we going to shut down this year or the next year or the next year? And now with an infinite runway, I believe that Fittr is going to become a phenomenon in the next 20 years to come. We don't have a 20-year plan, we have an 8-year plan. And I feel that, I don't know about what other companies will do or how much revenue we'll be making, but I know for a fact that people will remember us for all the good that we are doing now. And I have a good feeling about it. It'll make a difference.
I'm sure. I'm super excited of, like I said in the beginning, to see what's going to unfold with you and Fittr. My last question, if you had to go out and do a workout with someone who has made a lot of impact in your life, who would that person be and what workout would that be?
I really appreciate Cristiano Ronaldo.
Okay. I would love to know what workout would that be to do a workout with Ronaldo.
Whatever he does, it will be just good to be in his presence, because I think he does not need to do everything that he does, but he does it because he knows that somewhere out there a kid is watching him, and he's just setting up the right ideals, right? Out of all the things, I don't agree with him. The one thing that I agree with him is on the health part. He takes his health extremely seriously, and I think working out with him would be a real pleasure. More locally, I think everybody knows this. I'm a huge fan of Hrithik. Manifesting, I'll be meeting him soon and possibly working out together. Let's see.
Super good. It's been a pleasure, JC, to have this conversation. I've known you for a while, but I hope by this format, this means more people would know about you, will try to find the other side of yours. Super excited for the work you and the team is doing at Fittr, cheering for you and the team. Good luck with everything. We keep continuing exchanging messages all the time, so that will continue as it's going. But thank you once again for coming and having this conversation with me. It was a pleasure.
No, it's a pleasure, man. And I think this was a pretty long, but a very interesting podcast. I didn't feel for a minute like we were going over or something. It was really amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I am infamous to have a long conversation, just like my endurance experience.
This was perfect.
So because I love running long, I tend to have long conversation. But look, this was super fun, and we will do another one once you crack the milestone which you have in your mind to come back and unpack the new sides what you're trying to build up.
Perfect. Sounds good, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you, JC. So that was JC. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. You know the way to reach out to him, but we'll drop the links of social wherever he's reached out. If you have any feedback for me, share that, email, Twitter, or leave comments. That would mean a lot to me. Send some feedback how I can improve. Send some recommendations of whom I should be talking to next. If you think this conversation helped you in any way or could help others, share this to someone. Maybe they could just go out and explore their other side. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next episode with another guest.